Hi everyone, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. I'm your host, Dr. Heather Shah, and on behalf of Calwass, I would like to welcome all of you to this webinar. Thank you very much for joining us. Today, we have another very interesting topic, and I'm really honored to welcome and introduce our distinguished guest speaker who is going to talk about dealing with research methodology. Learn the basic understanding of research methodology. Most of the time, the students, particularly research students, they are not aware of the proper research methodology. So in this session, we will have a wonderful insights about research methodology as we have expert with us today in this session. So stay tuned because an amazing stuff are coming ahead in this session. So before we start, I would like to thank Calwass for arranging such enlightenment sessions and for their support and providing us such wonderful platform. The aim of Calwass is to give you the opportunity to interact with world renowned speakers, teachers, authors, researchers, experts, professionals, and businessmen to share their views, experiences, tips which will create an impact and will enable you to learn new things and to develop yourself in order to grow individually as well as to contribute to the world at large. As our slogan is to come, learn, and share knowledge. So today we have a wonderful guest with us who has a vast experience and he is internationally and nationally known speaker and trainer. He's a great human being who is always ready to share his knowledge on different platforms to contribute to the world in different ways. So even though he doesn't need any formal introduction because he is well-known person, but for the sake of those who are joining for the first time, let me introduce him formally. He is head of department and assistant professor, marketing, Department of Management Sciences, Capital University of Science and Technology, Islamabad. He has obtained his PhD from University Technology Malaysia, UTM. He published articles in high quality ISI impact factor journals, such as, for example, the Journal of Retailing and Consumer Services, ABDC A Rank Journal, Asian Pacific Journal of Marketing and Logistics, ABDC A Rank Journal, International Journal of Contemporary Hospitality Management, again ABDC A Rank Journal, and in International Journal of Hospitality Management, which is again ABDC A Rank Journal. He is also serving as a reviewer and editorial board of various international index journals. He conducted several workshops for postgraduate students regarding research methodology and PLS SCM. Area of his research include the service recovery, social capital, justice perception, customer satisfaction, branding, and methodological advances. So please help me in welcoming our guest speaker, Dr. Lucky Mohammed. Welcome to Calwass platform again, and thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much, sir. So nice of you for inviting me. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's again pleasure to have you with us, and we are taking a lot of advantage of your expert opinion and your deep knowledge which you have, and we always love to listen to your recommendation and your suggestion. So, as a reminder to the audience that before we get started, let me tell you the format of this session that Dr. Lucky Mohammed will be presenting and sharing his content, and at the end of the session, we will be having the question answer session. So if you have any question, you can email us through the info@of calwas.com, or you can paste it on the comment section. We will ask the Dr. Lucky Mohammed about it. So over to you, Dr.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for inviting me. And today we will discuss about the research method. Uh, uh, I will ask these audiences who are listening us that first we will look for the importance of this chapter. Then we will discuss how to deal with this chapter, and finally we will discuss how to write this chapter. And at the end of this, we will go for question and answer. Once again, thank you so much. Uh, Dear researchers, students, and faculty members, as you know, that methodology chapter is the most important chapter after the. Even though the research process in a research process, every chapter is important, but methodology and the first chapter, what we call it as introduction chapter, are where we explain the problem statement, everything. Most of the researchers who gain F grade, the reason is of these two chapters. Either first time in the first chapter they do not elaborate the problem properly, and the work they are doing is not worthwhile, and at the second stage, if they are not choosing the appropriate methodology, they can earn F grade. So that is the reason I mostly suggest to my students and all the colleagues that we have to spend sufficient time on what we call it as introduction chapter and methodology chapter. Then this is the importance of this chapter. And another aspect is, once we look for this methodology chapter, we have to connect it with the research question and objective what we have. Remember, audiences, none of the method and approach of doing research is right or wrong. The question is which method best match with our research question and objectives. So that is the reason we should look at with these angles so that we will remain successful. Now, if we come to methodology chapter, first in methodology chapter, we look for the what we call it as, if I started from the simple aspects, let's say from its paradigms, there are different aspects we need to look. Either we have to look which approach, which objective our research and research questions we are trying to answer. If we are just looking for the new linkages where most of the research is based on in our context, because in qualitative approach it's hardly followed by the researcher. This is a throughout the world the dilemma is. So in a quantitative aspect, the PhD students and the MS research students, they are mostly looking for the linkages of the constructs. So once this is the purpose, we need to use the quantitative approach. And once we are using this quantitative approach, the other question arises with this, that we have to collect the data from somewhere, to home from home or unit of analysis. Again, the most problematic in this chapter comes, the people hardly operationalize the unit of analysis, and they face a lot of music while they are defending their research proposal and all that stuff due to this unit of analysis. Okay, once we have decided about the unit of analysis and all that stuff, then we have to look, either we are going to do this research, either it's longitudinal or cross sectional. Now this is a main area where we need to focus. Somehow, in some study settings, the longitudinals might not be possible for the students, the PhD students. In some cases, it might be possible. Let me give you one example. For example, in HR, it might be possible because in offices, every employee comes on a daily basis and they have some employee number and all that stuff. And here the longitudinal is possible. Let's say Dr. Lucky is in office today, he will come tomorrow, day after tomorrow. It's routinized based, and people can easily gather data from these faculty member and all those who are working in different organizations. Now, in case of a customer, you just think you are collecting the data of a customer in a mall, in a bank, or whatever it is. You are not sure that he will come back after 7 days, 20 days, 30 days, 6 months. You're not sure. So again, there are challenges. We cannot go for this, what we call it as the longitudinal aspects. Yes, then in some cases where we have get some customer, the purpose of research and objective is like that. The researcher, the customer only allow us to be visited at different vicinities, like at his or her home or somewhere in his or her office. That might be possible, but again, it's a really challenging. I would suggest these researchers look for your own rationalities too while deciding for this longitudinal or cross sectional. Once the such research questions are there where you need to collect the longitudinal from customers, maybe it not be suggestive for MS students, particularly whose degree need to be completed within a 6 month or a year. I'm talking about the research. So by looking at all these rationalities, we have to look either where we need to select, either we need to conduct research on such research questions where these are the challenges. Look for your own rationalities. Another aspects, once you have decided this rationalities, the main aspect is then you need to look for designing your research questions survey to whom either you are selecting surveys, it's close-ended question or open-ended question. Again, these are the part of the research, but most of the time the researchers are taking some scales and they are getting on rating on some liquor type scales, and they are going for the research. Here, what is happening that the major question arises which questionnaire we should adopt for our research. Either we should adopt or adapt, whatever we have to do. The most of the mistake here the students and the researcher make, that is that they just rush towards the scales. They just search it out. Let's say it's customer satisfaction. Let's say they rush wherever they find it, they are using that scale. That scale might not be related to their study at all. Somewhere they only take the word satisfaction and they are just getting that scale. My suggestions and another aspect is they have multiple scales from different authors. Again, they face a challenge that which scale we need to select. Remember, students and researcher, there must be some approach where we need to look which scale we should opt or which scale we should opt out. My suggestions for you is that look for that scale which is related to your industry. For example, you are doing research on banking industry customer, look a scale which is available for this particular construct related to your industry in banking industry. Now the question arises, if it's not available in the banking industry, then what to do? Then I will suggest them then look for a related industry where the researcher has used different scales. When I say the related industry, what does the related industry mean? I mean to say that banking industry is a service sector. Now look for a service sector where a particular scale has been used. And accordingly, once you got that scale, then thoroughly read the scales, look the scales, have a critical view on that scale. Either you need to adopt it or adapt it, and if you need changes, what sort of changes you need. And here it is most important aspect is somewhere the experts are there, industry expert, subject experts, get input from those subject expert. I would suggest the researchers to look for the subject experts from different point of view. They will share either this scale is good or not, either it will fit or not. When I'm saying the subject expert, in selection of subject expert, look either they have published in this area or not, either they have the research profile or not. If yes, then get the advice rather than just looking that it's just a faculty member or whatever it is. We have to get this input from that person. Then look who has the research profile, discuss with them. They will let you know that what are the pros and cons of these different scales which you show them. At least take some these all scales to them. And uh, one dilemma is with the new researcher is that in the mind they have finalized few scale and they want to listen that the reviewer should also speak their language. This might not be the case. So listen to the reviewer. Either he or she is going against your approach. You have made your mind that you will opt the scale A. and that researcher or faculty member is saying you to opt the B scale, then go for the B. And maybe you look for the multiple experts. If, let's say, you visited five and three to four are saying this scale is good, then up that scale. And another challenge with the students and researcher is that which scale they should opt, either the lengthy one or the shortest one. Here is again an interesting aspect. Once we say the lengthier, like having 38, 20 to 18, 30, and so on items, again, these there will be challenges. Again, if some scales are singleton atom, using singleton atom, the higher use this word, like if again there are some challenges. Somehow you need to compromise on the errors, or you need to look that either a scale is covering aspects of that construct which is under observation. So you have to look. My suggestion is avoid too much lengthy scales. Why we need to avoid too much lengthy scale as much as possible? I'm saying as much as possible. I'm not saying the lengthy scales are not the good scales. I'm just letting you know, if you have options that one scale is lengthier one, the other is one is not lengthy, go for which is not lengthy. It has some aspects. What are those? Once you go for data collection, you are quite energetic while you are designing your survey questionnaire. Once you go in the field and try to collect the data, you will face a lot of music. Let me know that who else is going to take for going to respond you on a scale of, let's say, 30 to 40 page. No one. Let's say you are having questions like 100 or 110 or something, 90, 80. Who is going to respond you? Who is going to read all that stuff? Again, in this busy life, everybody is busy, like you people are busy. So we have to look for such issues, and we need to avoid those lengthy scales. Another problem, this was related to the scale. Another issue is that most of the students, sometime because they are just new, mostly in MS program, those who are involved, they look for some question. They put some questions from their own side. They think this will also fit like that. Please avoid this. Do not do this. At the end, these items will not be related with those which you have opted. So you have to look for such things while you people are doing preparing your questionnaire design. And another aspects where the students look for, that is the demographic characteristics of the respondents. Most of the students go for asking the respondents like name, they put the fill and they ask them to respond, they ask them to their email IDs. Avoid this. No need for this. Anonymity, keep the anonymity of the respondent. And people are highly reluctant once their identity is on the page. They do not try to once they try to hide the information. So we have to avoid this one. And some of the reason they go straight and ask like a question like, what is your age? Nobody is going to let you know the exact age. So always go for the brackets. For example, if we say someone, what is your income? It's unethical altogether, I believe. So there must be some ranges where they need to select, let's say, below some amount, let's say 20,000, 50,000, or whatever it is. There must be ranges and some equally distributed ranges, and the respondent need to select out of these ranges. So again, same aspects. Here, another mistake the students made. Let's say they are asking about the age. They move up to like 20, 20 to 25, then 25 to 30. At the end, they get tired and say 40 to 50, 45. They forget about that someone can be elder than 45 too. And this is another challenge. You have to look that you have covered all the brackets. And let's say if you want to get tired, just say that above 60. So someone should have like where to respond rather than you just keeping them close at 45, 55, or whatever 60 is. Now, here the challenge they say that okay, we are not going to have the data for those people, let's say, who are they are just looking at the bracket between like less than 40 year of age. Again, once you are getting questionnaire, you must have the screening question. Let's say you are saying 40 and above. You need to put this in your questionnaire. If someone say to select 40 and above, you may not need the data further because he or she is not from your respondents. But you should have these aspects. This is what you as a researcher need to decide which questionnaire you need to include and which one you need to exclude. There must be some sort of what we call it as the approach where you select all these things. Another issue is that a debate arises. What is that debate? They said that these demographic characteristic either should be at the end of the questionnaire or at the beginning of the questionnaire. This depends altogether on your approach. If you are having, let's say, screening questions, and if after you feel that you are using paper and pencil method, or you feel that you don't want to consume the time of the respondent if it is an online, then put these demographic aspects in the beginning where you just say that, for example, we are collecting the data from those customers who are using online banking. If you ask that if you are using online bank, you have ever used online banking, let's say it's yes or no. If they select no, then terminate the questionnaire by saying thank you so much for your response, rather than they are not using this online banking and you get till the last mile and at the end you will discard it. You have wasted the respondent time. So this is a way where the screening is required at the beginning. Then maybe this demographic aspects be pondered in the beginning, put in the beginning of the questionnaire. And if this is not the case, then I would suggest go at the end of the questionnaire. So this was a bit about what we call it as the questionnaire design. While you are using the questionnaire design, look for how you will look for common method bias approach, and you may need to put something what we call it as in your research questionnaire. Again, after finalizing the research questionnaire, I would suggest the respondents to look for, after finalizing this questionnaire you have made from your side, then again look for the experts and industry experts' view. If they are okay with, then go for the pilot test. If the pilot test is okay, then move for the next. So you must have a plan well before execution of this research, and this all plan should be part of this chapter. Now, once this questionnaire and all aspect is ready, then we need to look for what we call it as sampling and population. Here, most of the issue the students are facing, they hardly define unit of analysis, or they broadly define it, and they mostly broadly define it, and at the end they went in a like a closed room where it is hard to get out of that room. For example, some students say that okay, who are your respondent? He said that okay, the university employee. This might not be the proper definition of unit of analysis. Now see, the university bus driver is also an employee of university. University's vice chancellor is also an employee of the university, and the security guards and whatever this cleaning staff and all that stuff, or the might be on the university payroll. So again, if these are the people, then you need to translate your questionnaire into different languages. They may not talk that language where you are selecting the data. You need to properly define your unit of analysis. Let's say I say unit of analysis of this study are the faculty members who are teaching since 2 years. Now see, there are some aspects where I am looking for. So this unit of analysis definition demands some screening questions, like either they have taught for 2 years or not, either they are the faculty members or not. We need to make sure this one. And this is what it looks that it defines your population. Now see, if we say that university implies, it might be a huge number. If we say that those faculty members who are teaching in this university since 2 years, again the number is scroll down. Here is the issue, which it defines your population. The proper definition of unit of analysis, I strongly suggest you, the researchers, you must define the unit of analysis properly. If you fail to define the unit of an operationalized unit of analysis properly, you may go in a wrong way. And again, your population data might not represent your population, and your samples might not be from that population. So we have to define this very properly. Once you have done all that stuff, then the next challenge goes for what we call it as the sampling approach. Again, here are some challenges. Most of the time, when I look for the researcher, they only look for the debates, like either it's probability or non-probability, nothing more than that. If it is a probability, they are just selecting simple random sampling. If it's a non-probability, they stick on like what we call it as convenience sampling. Again, they do not even bother to look. There can be other types of the sampling related to what we call it as these types. In probability sampling might be other options, like in non-probability sampling might be other options. So they just indulge in a debate that which one is good or bad. None of the approach is good or bad. The point is, you have to look which has more relevance to your research question and objectives. We cannot use at every place the simple random. We cannot use. We cannot use only convenience at every place. Again, there is a challenge. So we have to look. What we have to look, the question rises, we need to look for strength and weaknesses of every types of the scale, the sampling approach. Again, let's say you are looking for uh, for uh, for a for a respondent. Let's say you are looking for the drug addictors, or you are looking for, let's say, specific patients, or you're looking for some different respondent who are hardly disclosed in the society. So again, you may not be able to use the sampling approach, what we call it as the probability sampling or the rest. You may go for purposive sampling, you may look for snowball sampling. So these are the aspects where we need to ponder, where we need to spend sufficient time. We need to read all these aspects. We need to read all those researchers who have already made research in that particular area, what approach they have used. We have to look rather than just taking a simple our own opinion that okay, only if this approach is easier for me, so I should use this one. As a researcher, you are independent of the research. You need to justify why you have selected this approach, and you need to justify this sampling approach. And then after, again, here is a problem that most of the norm says that, for example, that population size is not defined. So I cannot use the probability sampling now. That's why I have to use only the non-probability, and that is convenience. Again, this might not be the case. For the references, look for my different paper where we have used systematic sampling approach and we justified it how to use this approach. And though it's a probability sampling, but we justified it where the population cannot be numbered. I have particularly mentioned in one of my article. You can look for that one. But again, this case might be possible only in like shopping mall settings, in a bank settings where the customers only go for a services or whatever it is. And so for other might not be possible. So this is the reason we need to look either in this context this approach will be helpful or not. Definitely, there are researchers some issues where they can counter it where they cannot, and there are what are the reason this particular approach cannot be used. Once you have pondered in all these things, you can easily defend your research proposal, you can easily defend your thesis, you can easily defend your viva, you can easily defend your sampling approach from the reviewer. So that is the reason you need to ponder. You will be very clear that why I not use this particular approach, like let's say simple random, or why I did not use, let's say, what we call it as convenient sampling, snowball sampling. Why I used, why I not used. You have to answer these two questions. Let's say if someone asks you why do not use the snowball sampling approach, you should be very well clear that yes, these were the particular reasons which hinder me to opt for this type of sampling. And again, if someone asks you why you did not use systematic sampling, well, you should be ready to answer this question. This will be very easier once you decided on the beginning stage that which approach I have to use. This need a great deal of consideration while we are looking. And again, if you considered all these aspects, you will be able to respond what we call it as the reviewer, the examiner, and the co-researcher, where you can justify that yes, that was the reason I selected this approach. And then comes you have collected the data and you selected the sampling approach. Now you have to decide on what we call it as what the data analysis tool we need to use. Again, the problem is wherever the researcher or student or expert, they said, okay, I will use only this tool because I know about this tool. This should not be the case. Look for the reasons. Once we say that data analysis tool, we need to look for different tools like first generation data analysis tool, second generation data analysis tool. So we need to look for these strengths and weaknesses, and from second generation analysis tool again, which we have to look which tools support which sort of aspects. Let's say either we are using parametric statistics, non-parametric statistics. Again, the approach and the way these statistics do deal with is totally different. Accordingly, the tools might be different. Accordingly, the test might be different. So this is the reason we need to ponder. Now, before we need to decide for our data analysis tool, we broadly need to look either, let's say, what we call it as we are using parametric or non-parametric. And again, first we need to know what is the difference these two types of statistics. What are the prerequisites for these two types of statistics? So we have to look for such critical questions. And again, these questions only can be answered once you have expertise. You have read about all these aspects. You have discussed with your colleagues, friends. You are not working with isolation. You are working with the like senior from you. Like if you people are now just at your proposal stage, and someone might be at a writing stage. They have analyzed the data. They have published the data, Someone might be on methodology chapter. You can ask them what issues they confronted while writing methodology chapter and while selecting these data analysis tool. So this is a way. In a research, we cannot work on in isolation without discussing with your senior researcher, without discussing with the senior students. You may not be well able to solve your issues. And I strongly believe that we should avoid isolation as a researcher. I will recommend this to all of the students, particularly who are enrolled in any PhD program. Do not work in isolation. Discuss this with your co-researcher. Discuss the issues with your senior and again the faculty member. Do not be shy to discuss your research with the other faculty member in your university. And again, get the input from them. And definitely, you will be looking for if you are opting that input, you have to discuss with your supervisor. So these are the approaches where I think you can get out of this situation. And the main aspect is uh, in this methodology. The bottom of the line is what makes a methodology successful and what does not makes a research methodology chapter unsuccessful. The bottom of the line, the key is the students hardly do literature review on method. They only do literature review for the literature review chapter. They do not look what methods are there, what the changes has been incorporated in methodology chapter, what the tools have been made, bring for new recent tests and all that stuff. They do not do literature review. I would suggest all of you, instead of doing literature review for the literature review chapter only, do the literature review for methodology chapter 2. It will make your life easier. Otherwise, let's say if you are getting stuck, okay, everybody is using SPSS or everybody is using Smart PLS, everybody is using MS, so I should use. This is not the answer. So do the literature review. Whatever they have done in your area of research, you have to look which tool they used and why they used it, which statistics, parametric or non-parametric they selected and why they selected. So in this way, by doing a proper literature review for methodology chapter, you can succeed in methodology. And this is the bottom line. And you have to read maximum. And unfortunately, we are just asking 1 to 3 people, and they are doing this. Okay, we are saying okay, we will do this. This is not the case. This expertise you need is that only comes through reading the material, discussing the researcher, and all that stuff. And most of the time, once we are in this field, we are in like interviewing different recent PhD scholars and all that stuff. They mostly lack on these aspects, that what we term it as methodology and all that stuff, because they didn't read in depth. They just, someone told them, they just carry it forward. And again, this is a way where the recent graduates who are enrolled in different programs, they need to look for these aspects in depth rather than just rushing to use the methodology, have the knowledge of methodology, and do the literature review. This is what I think. These are the few inputs out of what we call it as the most challenging issues where I have discussed. Though there are other parts of the research methodology too, we didn't want on these. So we close our discussion on here on this these particular issues, and now we will move for question and answer if there are, please.
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Lucky Muhammad, for wonderful insight. You have discussed each and every point of research methodology where we probably face kind of challenges and problems. And like the phrase you have mentioned, that yes, most of the time what we do is we only do a literature review of literature review. We do not do the literature review for research methodology. And I like your opening statement, which was wonderful, that we must see our research question and objectives and then align our methodology according to it. So most of the things, Dr. Laki Mohammed, you have covered in your all these things which you have discussed, that where we probably can go wrong in alignment of our research methodology to our research question and objectives. Very nicely concluded all the things and summarizing the thing. I was watching the comment, and in comment section I found that one person has comment that I'm going to listen this lecture many times. Why? Just because you have included so many important things in that. So very good, wonderful tips and wonderful suggestion you have mentioned. But we have a few questions for you, Dr. Laki Mohammed. Should we
Yes,
start with the
definitely.
first one?
Yeah, yes, please, please.
Yeah, yeah. So the first question, which you have already discussed in your presentation as well, that was regarding the longitudinal and the cross-sectional studies. But the question is, the one person wants to ask the question that is there any specific time frame in cross-sectional studies? It means that person refers to whether they should be conducting cross-sectional studies within a month, 2 months, 3 months, or 6 months. Is there any particular specific time frame for that? Yes, please.
Yes, if we look that true myth of the longitudinal study, that there must be some changes which are required to look for. Like, let's say, if we say that, okay, after this particular, now this incident has happened, now we are able to collect the data. This is the true myth. Like, the point of times we decide. But nowadays, and another approach is being used too. Actually, what we how we define the longitudinal, it is that collection of data from the same respondent in different point of time.
Mm,
This different point of time does not circumvent the time period, like let's say 4 days, 10 days, 7 days. This is one approach where we can say that that is helpful to counter what we call it as the common method bias. Maybe some researchers are looking this collection of data after 15 days, some after a month, but the purpose is only to counter with this common method bias rather than looking for other aspects. Otherwise, in PhD students, they mostly go for such things. If they keep it lengthy, like if a student is in a primary class, his grades are either affecting in a middle class, then again in his or her practical life, this takes too long life. I think the PhD student does not have so much time, as much time, that they should wait for 40 to 50 years. So this approach can be handled. If we look at different those studies who are using time lag, they mostly change from 15 days to 1 month, I believe.
yes.
So this is what we can see in the literature.
Oh, very nicely said. And that's the beauty of the expert. When you ask the question, they always give the reference for the thing which you have mentioned. Very nice. Okay, Dr. Lucky Mohammed, we have another question. And you know very well as a supervisor, as an examiner, that most of the time the students, they are very concerned about the reliability. So there is one question from the student that please recommend whether 15 respondents are appropriate for testing reliability of a questionnaire. Yes, your opinion on that, please.
Yes, this is. I think probably the student is talking about the
From my
pilot test. I think they are talking about the pilot test. Somewhere, I personally, but I'm not saying in a literature, I personally don't think so that the pilot test is bit going to help, because though we are going to conduct a pilot test for 25, 35 people, reliability is okay. But maybe at a longer stage, some items we may need to drop. If the reliability was at that time was okay, now why it's not okay? But now, as this is a norm, we have to look for at least 25 respondents' data for reliability. Though I do personally criticize this, but in some are personal views, some are the industrial norms. We have to follow those norms because these students have to appear in front of the examiner. So I think they should do as the Roman do. So they have to look they have to look for 25 to 35, what we call it as the pilot for the pilot test.
Yeah, very nicely said once again, Dr. Leki Mohammed. Thank you very much for elaborative answer. Okay, there is one another question that is that, sir, please elaborate when is a qualitative research methodology is appropriate, which you have already mentioned, but since that person has insisted to answer, so please
Yes,
guide them.
yes, that's again a good question. Whatever we are doing, students, we must have a reason why we are doing this. Just for the sake of qualitative or quantitative, we are doing this might be the wrong. This might not be the story. I met a student who was saying, I'm doing qualitative and I'm developing the skill. My question was, why you are developing the skill once a lot of skills are available for this construct? Why you are doing this?
Yes.
And
Wonderful.
believe me, he was saying, okay, so though these are available, what I have to develop? Why we need to develop? That is the question.
Yes.
Either some scenarios has changed, some aspects has changed. We need to look what further we can add. And if some aspect is missing, let's say we are saying that, well, customer forgiveness scale is somewhere we opted from theology or somewhere else. Now it doesn't exist in commercial context, though the researcher used it. It was from commercial context, but they opted from different field of studies. Then it justifies that, okay, now we have to go for qualitative, that first we need to operationalize this, we need to define this in commercial context. Then we may ask the experts, subject experts, and again the industry experts to define the customer forgiveness or consumer forgiveness in commercial context. They might be give something new idea. Then it may justify that, okay, I'm going to do this qualitative. Why? Because this particular construct was not clear, particularly in one week what we call it as in commercial context. So this justifies we need to look for qualitative part. But just doing qualitative for the sake of qualitative, this might not justify.
Yes, very nicely said once again, Dr. Lucky Mohammed. And I like the phrase, you must justify whatever you are doing. Most
Yes.
of the time, when I'm in the class of PhD or MS, MPhil, I used to tell them that whatever we do in the research, it's not because of my will or wish, it is just because the requirement or the need of the research. So we do each and everything what is required in the research. Okay, Dr.
This
Lucky
is
Mohammed,
actually the point.
yes, please. Continue, please, please.
Yes, this is actually the point, that what is required to do we have to do rather than what is our wish to do.
Very nicely said once again. Okay, Dr. Lucky Mohammed, there is one question from Mohammed Farooq Akhtar that please discuss about the G Power software for sample size selection or use of other methods of sample selection. Because we have received a lot of questions regarding the sample size selection. Some recommend the Oma Sakran table, some recommend the Morgan and Kregis table for sample selection. Again, please, your opinion on that, which method to follow or which technique to follow or which table to refer. Yes, please.
That is a very good question. Actually, we mostly ponder with this question.
Yes, very good.
We need to decide on sample size, because sometimes we take larger sample size, and once the sample size gets larger from a specific point, all the p values becomes satisfactory. All the hypotheses are supported. So this should not be the case. We should take appropriate sample size. Now the question arises, how to decide on that sample size. This is an important question. Remember, here there are two aspects which connects with this sample size. If the population size is defined, let's say we were talking about the faculty members in different public sector universities or private sector universities, we can number these people. It is can be easily available. So once this number is available, we may use some tables like what we are calling at Morgan table, and the rest we can use because we know about this population size. The challenge arises where the population size is not defined, then what to do? So again, there is in my articles mostly. If we read those articles, if I can show those articles, uh, if I have these articles, we need to look that we do have used this G power calculator for what we call it as to decide on sample size. Uh,
It's
there
visible,
are
Dr. Zaki Mohammed. We can see it.
yes, it's visible. It look like okay. If we look on to decide on sample size, we have explained this somewhere. Okay, this is an article where it is published in this Asia Pacific Journal of Marketing and Logistics. And we have talked about the sample size. To decide on sample size, we have looked into the methodology. If I can go for it, uh, here somewhere we have, here it is. Here we can use this one like in the other article I do too. Most of the time, if you read my article, I mostly use this approach. And again, in my recent article in Asia Pacific Journal of Marketing and Logistics, other than Asia Pacific, like this article, in all these journals, we use this approach by because in case of customer, this might not be the case to look for the complete what we call it as the population size. We use this G power calculator, and it's very simple. This software is freely available. People can download it. And what is the approach to calculate this sample size? I would suggest them to read my articles. Read my recent article. These are available if you look for Google Scholar, and you can look into these recent articles. And in almost all papers, I have used this G power calculator to calculate the sample size.
Yes. And sure, we will be putting this link for the audience so that they can watch and they can easily get these articles of yours so that they could learn from it more about it.
Yes,
Thank you very much.
definitely.
Yeah. Thank you very much for such a wonderful answer again. And that brings me to the another question. Dr. Lucky Mohammed, the another question is very interesting, and most of the time we are puzzled with this kind of question that whether we should go for the qualitative or quantitative or mixed method. So the question is, which method is more preferable? Please discuss the importance of choosing mixed method, particularly in social sciences. Yes, please guide about it, please.
Yes, this again, every aspect have merits and demerits, but we cannot say that a one fit for all solution is not possible.
Yes.
Again, this connects with the research questions. If my research questions are in a way, the problem I am trying to solve is that it demands some parts like qualitative and other quantitative. We should go for such thing. If this is not the case, we should avoid this aspect, and we need to look for such thing. Either our research objective questions are demanding that we cannot answer this through only quantitative approach, then we look for the other approach scope. If this is not the case, we should avoid this mixing all that stuff.
True. Very nicely said. And that brings me to the another question, which is related. There are two questions, Dr. Laki Mohammed, and two different perspectives. One perspective
Definitely.
is the student perspective. They want to ask the question that which is the best research methodology book for the beginners. And the second question, which is from other perspective, that is from teacher's perspective, one of the PhD doctor wants to ask you that which book do you recommend to teach research methodology for the advanced classes? Yes, please answer on both.
This is a very good question. I mostly answer it in a different way. If you are a PhD student, as much book you can read, please read. This is the necessity of the hour. I suggest you to please read different books. Like Sounder has written very well related to this particular research, and Creswell have done a very good job. Again, these are the books. Zygmunt have also done a lot of things. So we have to read as much as we can read. This is what I am letting to know the students, and they have to look for such thing. Now, this comes to the faculty members. As a faculty member, first, if we are teaching the research methods and advanced research method courses, I would suggest them they should first publish, then teach this course. It will be a totally different approach where you will go in the class there what you are teaching, and the class will enjoy and you will enjoy that how to teach this course. And you will then, if you have published, then you will teach over there with the researcher approach. That is a totally an amazing approach. And for the books, as far as the books is concerned, mostly I would suggest that every books have some peculiar aspects. Some has explained this, what we call it as the sampling approach, very properly, very clearly, and when and why to use this sampling approach very vividly. So we have to select that part of a particular book. And I said, let's say if we look for Sikaran, I have read in the current paper. And the book that is well written, they have about what we call it as this sampling approach is. They have defined it very well and explained it in a very peculiar way. And the complete research method, I would recommend the faculty member. Saunders have mentioned a research onion to go through that one. It is an important aspect there where they can look at it. It's very interesting too. So this is a way they have to look for which aspects, uh, which course area they are teaching in this course, and what are the objective of this course. Either they need these. Once we say that in a course, we by using Bloom taxonomy, if they need to look which level they want to have this course, and accordingly they need to select these aspects. If they are teaching undergraduate the research method and all that stuff, they might not need so much depth. And if they are teaching like MS MBA students and the master degree students, then definitely they need some depth. So that is the reason select from areas from those books which have discussed in detail and in depth. If the course is undergraduate, then we have to give the concept to the student. So this is the way I would suggest to select the peculiar parts from different books which have discussed the depth of the course rather than relying on a single book.
Yes, very nicely said, Dr. Lucky Muhammad. Once again, very elaborative answer to that. And I like the way you said that you have to see if you are teaching to the undergrad, then you first need to build the concepts. And for PhD particularly, yes, of course, we have to go in depth so that they could have the proper understanding for that purpose. Very nicely said, and wonderful book you have recommended. That is the most recommended book for research methodology. I know it's the time almost, but let me just ask you the last question. That is very much important, and it's the current time question. Most of the students they ask that what is the impact of a pandemic of this COVID-19 on research design? Because most of the research is being conducted online to get the data. So, what is your opinion on that? Because of the pandemic, does it change the research design? Yes, please.
Yes, that was the time once, let's say, before new normal. In the current era, we will call it as a new normal. Now I think the things are getting open as much as the vaccination is increasing. The organizations, the universities are coming to the new normal. But yes, people are right. During the pandemic, it was an issue. Only online approach was the common approach, but it will remain common. But again, I will say, if your approach should be online, if the research question and methodology does not get hurted by collecting this type of data. So if it does not hurts that particular areas, because now the sessions, now these aspects can be arranged like we are just online sitting in different places. Definitely respondents sometimes they avoid for such things. If it is if in such a phenomenon sitting with the uh, like say 100, 200, 300 respondent might not be possible. An online questionnaire by using different tools like Google Docs and all that's might be possible. So definitely these have impact. Look for such things. And even before it was only recommended to go for online because the offline context was not possible. The universities were not taking risk to send their students in a vicinity of the customer employees and all that stuff. At that time, it was the required of the need. Accordingly, they were going online, and this weakness was justified because the scenario throughout the world was that. Now we are returning to the new normal, and though it will remain for few further maybe years or but again we have to look either our in this new normal this might be we might be unable to justify that this was the reason and accordingly we collected online. Now the reviewer might not digest this information because in the world vaccination is on and people are coming to the new normal.
True. Very well said, Dr. Lucky Mohammed. Once again, thank you very much for such elaborative answers and removing the doubts and the concerns of the students who are very much concerned about the research methodology, your recommendation, your recommended books. I hope that will be a very beneficial for them for their research journey. And let me tell the audience that we will have another session with Dr. Lucky Mohammed regarding the misconception about the methodology. So that would be the follow-up session again with the Dr. Lucky Mohammed, which will be very interactive and interesting session. So thank you very much once again, the Dr. Lucky Mohammed, for such a wonderful and the grip you have, the command you have on such research methodology. I love the session, and I always love while listening to your recommendation and your experiences because that have come from the publication in the world reputed journals. And I like the phrase which you have used that faculty members should publish first in a good reputed journal. Let them go through the process. They will learn a lot, and then they can share with their students in a more better way, in a more productive way. So, what is your message to the world as a teacher, researcher, trainer, learner, professional, and educator? And your concluding remarks, Dr. Lucky Mohammed, please.
As well, I will ask the students, researcher, and do this research and try to solve the problems which in different areas, industry, particularly related to bottom of the pyramid, and try to solve these problems as a researcher and give valuable suggestion to the policymaker, to the manager, so that we can serve the bottom of the pyramid. Thank you, sir.
Wow. Wonderful, wonderful message, and always you share the great thing with us. And to the audience, I would like to tell them that we will be providing the links of the papers which are published by Dr. Lucky Mohammed. That would be available in this session below in the description section. You can find it. You can. We will be giving you the detail of the Dr. Lucky Mohammed, his Google Scholar account, so that you could go through the other papers of him as well, in order to learn more about the different things, because it's not related to research methodology. He's the expert of so many things, so you can take advantage of his research paper by reading and citing his work, because it's so worthy enough. Thank you once again. And indeed, at the end, I would say that yes, research methodology is so important, and we need to consider that our research methodology is in line with the research question and objectives, because whatever we do in research is it's not about what we like, it's about what is required to do that research properly. So that's all we have time for today. Thank you once again, Dr. Lucky Muhammad, for your valuable time and your recommendation and tips to the students. And I would also like the audience to thank them for joining us. If you have any additional question for us regarding the information shared today, you can email us at info@calwass.com, or you can ask the speaker directly through his email or social media account, etc. Thank you all for your support and liking our sessions. Stay tuned as many sessions are on the way. Please do not miss any session. So till next session, stay safe, take care of